this regular school committee meeting of Thursday, July 21st, 2018. I'm going to read about our art, and then we're going to have a quick recess, quick exit into executive session, which we'll return from at around 6:55. So first, our art. We have new and beautiful art. It's from our preschools. And going from, okay, this corner over here, Preschool 1 learned about Eric Carle and the story The Very Lonely Firefly. They worked hard decorating fireflies with just the right amount of glitter. And they also wanted to add some interest to the display and drew inspiration from Vincent van Gogh. So these are awesome. On this side, in the corner, is from preschool number 2. They read Goodnight Gorilla by Peggy Rathman and then made animals from the book. And there's lots of animals. Next to it is Bugs from preschool 3. They learned about bugs this spring. They had an extensive book collection of fiction and nonfiction books from the librarians of the children's room at the Robins. They looked at photos of close-up pictures of bugs and played with pretend bugs and all sorts of things, and watched real caterpillars emerge as butterflies, and then they used materials to make their own unique bug. In the far end, preschool 4 did Suns in response to a poem that starts, "Oh, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun, please shine down on me." And then over on this board, preschool 5 used a variety of mediums to create fruits and vegetables that corresponded to the first letter of their names. Their theme has been fruits, vegetables, and healthy eating. They were encouraged to use any materials they wanted to use, and those included puffy paint, glue, markers, felt buttons, and tissue paper. And next to it, we have our last one from preschool 6. It's called Under the Deep Blue Sea. Their project was a view from a submarine porthole. The preschoolers used watercolor to paint the paper plates. They then used ocean stickers and embellishments to decorate it. Finally, they used roller brushes to paint the background to look like the colors of the ocean. And all of the art is really awesome. And I wish people could, I hope they're able to see it with ACMi. And now at this point, I would like a motion to go into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union and or non-union personnel or contract negotiations with union and or non-union in which, if held in an open meeting, may have a detrimental effect, to conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation in which, if held in an open meeting, may have a detrimental effect. Collective bargaining may also be conducted. To discuss and vote the 680 School Bus Workers Memorandum Agreement of June 2018. Discuss and vote the 680 School Cafeteria Workers Memorandum Agreement, June 18. Discuss and vote the Arlington Administration Association Memorandum of Agreement, June 2018. Discuss and vote the recognition of the AEA Paraprofessional Unit.
So move.
Second.
Okay, this will be a roll call vote. Mr. Hayner?
Yes.
Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
Mr. Spielman? Mr. Schlickman?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Seuss? Mr. Carden is not here, and I say yes. So with that, we will exit to executive session, and we'll be returning around 6:55. Thank you. Okay, we're coming back from executive session. Can I have a motion about the 680 school?
So moved.
You got to specify.
No, what she just said.
Can I have a motion?
Okay.
Yeah, I move that we approve the 680 School Bus Workers Memorandum Agreement, June 2018.
And
And
authorize the chair.
And authorize the chair to sign it.
Okay, and I have a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Do we need to do this one as roll call?
No.
No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. Can I have a motion about the 680 school cafeteria workers?
Move to approve cafeteria workers memorandum of agreement 680 dated June 2018,
And
and authorize the president, the chair, to sign the contract.
Okay.
Thank you,
Second?
Mr. Schlickman.
Second?
second.
Any discussion? Any, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Mr. Schlickman to do the next one.
Yes, please.
Motion to approve the recognition of AEA paraprofessional unit as presented.
Okay. Any discussion?
Second.
Oh, sorry, second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And can I have a motion for the creation of a negotiating committee for this? Mr. Thielman?
I move that the AEA representatives continue.
No, it needs to be,
Different.
it's different.
No, it's got to be different.
It's different. So I move that Kirstie Allison Ampe and Paul Schlickman be our delegates to the negotiations of the AEA paraprofessional unit.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously also. So thank you for everyone who served on our negotiating committees, and we're very happy to have agreements with several of our unions. Dr. Bodie, did you want to speak to Mr. O'Neill, Dr. Neal? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Now, okay.
One of the wonderful things about Arlington is the generosity of people for scholarships, and tonight is the Dollars for Scholars, and they raise literally hundreds of thousands of dollars that are given in scholarships to our students. So it's tonight. Unfortunately, there's a conflict, but Dr. McNeil is going to leave a little early so that he can represent us at the event. But I want to take the opportunity to thank Treasurer Dean Carmen and all the people who contribute to this scholarship fund. It's terrific. Thank you. Let me introduce
Sure,
Kim.
please. Oh, so there is no public participation, so moving on.
Well, I have the pleasure to introduce Ms. Kim Pratt, who has been a longtime teacher. She echoes longtime teacher here in the Arlington Public Schools, a very beloved teacher at Stratton School in first grade. And she's here tonight to present a lesson, and I'm going to let Dr. McNeil talk a little bit about the context for this.
Yes, so Mrs. Pratt and the first grade teachers from Stratton took their students down to the name of, excuse me, I got my microphone. Mrs. Pratt and the first grade teachers from Stratton went down to the courthouse, and they put Goldilocks on trial as part of our integrated units between social studies and ELA. I'll let her talk about the unit and the activity and how it, and the various skill sets that they worked on within, for this lesson. But it is a lesson in civics.
Allie Megahayes was asked to speak tonight, but she is at, she's with Lucy Calkins right now. She's in New York City at a conference, so she asked me to speak on the first grade teacher's behalf for Stratton. She came with us that night, so thank you, Allie, for letting me come. The first grade across the district has implemented this unit. It was created between the Social Studies Department and the ELA coaches. It is a integrated unit of literacy and social studies. It is created through, if I get this right, Discovering Justice, Children Discovering Justice. We went to the Moakley Courthouse in Boston.
Right.
So it is a literacy-based social studies curriculum for grades K through 8. So we were the first to go for the first grade, which was really cool. And it is an integration of democracy, tolerance, rights, responsibilities, and the connection between rules and laws. So this is what we brought the children to do. It also melded really nicely with our nonfiction our opinion writing, so children understanding perspective, which we had done earlier with our writing. So it was really nice between the two to kind of come together. So Denny worked really well with the literacy coaches to kind of put all of our lessons together to make the two kind of meet. It was such a cool field trip for these kids, how it ended after all the lessons. It was an intense, about 17 lessons we taught leading up to the field trip that we managed to get in, that we didn't realize, I think, how intense it was. But once we started taking it on, the children were really engaged and were thrilled to go. As we got to Moakley, we were a little early, as you can imagine, that day, getting into Boston. So the kids were entertaining the passerbys, the streets of Boston.
Can you speak to the specific roles that were given to the students inside the courthouse?
So once we were brought into the courthouse, we were actually ahead of time assigned roles. So we were given roles. The Discovering Justice staff, and there were volunteers that led the group. We gave the children roles. There were jurors, there were judges, there were clerks, and there were attorneys. And so we brought 75 students with us that day, and we were divided into 2 courtrooms. So we had 2 mock trials, they called us, running at the same time, side by side. So there were about 30-something over here, 30-something over here. So a judge presiding over here, a judge presiding over there. And what they did was have the Discovering Justice staff retell the story of Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, add a little bit to it. Their staff and volunteers, along with parent volunteers that we brought, also helped keep the children moving and engaged. And then we broke them off into smaller groups and then helped them craft their arguments and to keep on topic and to then formulate Goldilocks' side and the Bears' side. And then craft lawyers, craft witnesses, craft their arguments. And then they presented. And they had roles, and the judge spoke, and the clerk made people stand, and it was absolutely hysterical, and it was a trial. And then at the end, one court found her guilty, and one found her not guilty. But they learned about perspective, they learned about roles and how to be fair, and you had to have evidence, and how the court system worked. So it was a great thing. So from what I understand, they have this for grades 1 through 5. And Denny and the coaches have worked on curriculum for 1 through 5 also to kind of work around with all of this. So it was really cool. It's nice to have the 2 departments work together for us also.
We've had a chance to go through the presentation on our computers, so while we continue to go
That's fine.
technical difficulties,
Yeah.
maybe if people have questions, Mr. Hayner?
I'm just curious, any of these students decided that they want to become attorneys?
I think a few might. They were, or they may have heard things ahead of time. They're like, we feel Goldilocks was, guilty, they said, because they found DNA. They were quoting maybe their parents or things they've heard. I don't know. They were really funny. We found the gold hair. DNA proved it was her, they said. So they were really trying to use facts. They understood what their job was.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So it was unbelievable. They enjoyed it a lot. So.
Sounds like a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
I think the focus on rules is probably kids are super excited about that because their whole world is rules, right? And so whether this rule makes sense, can I violate it, is what they're already thinking,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so that sounds really exciting. I have a question about going forward. Is this something we are looking to replicate? Are we looking to replicate at other schools or at Stratton in alternative years? Do we?
From what we were told is only one grade per school can go per school year.
Okay.
So obviously the year's over, and we just went. So if next year, say, a 2nd grade decides to go from Stratton, no other grade from Stratton could go.
Right. Okay.
So I think.
But it's another school in Arlington could do it.
They could, yes.
As well. Okay.
And I think, if I understand, I heard a 5th grade has already gone and participated, and I believe they had the Boston Massacre, if I'm correct, is what they was what met their frameworks for the 5th grade. So,
Yeah, anyone else? Mr. Schlickman?
Did they know what the case was going in?
they knew.
Okay.
Yes, we had done a lot of lessons ahead of time, so they understood, and we had done a lot of, the literacy coaches had worked with Denny and bought us all the materials, so we had done different books and different perspectives for Goldilocks, the traditional tale and the untraditional tale, so they understood perspective coming into it.
So what's the penalty for Goldilocks' crime?
I'm not really sure. They just said she was guilty, and that was,
Bed without dinner.
I don't know. She had to go home.
So I would like to also commend the first grade teachers, our social studies director, Denny Conklin, for working together with these integrated units. And I also like to draw our attention to our vision statement of vision of student as learner and global citizen, and many of the things that the skills and what we want our students to have as a disposition as they matriculate through our school system can be exhibited. So that's evidence, as we've been talking about. What are the evidence? What are some of the things that we're doing in instruction to meet that vision? This is a prime example of that. And so as we go back and look at that, for instance, develop and defend arguments based on evidence and respectfully consider different perspectives, this is one of those things that highlights that particular disposition starting in first grade. And so I think that is something, just as an example, that as we think about, as we move forward, these are the type of things or evidence that we're looking for that supports that vision statement. So thank you very much, Mrs. Pratt, and your entire first grade team.
No problem. Thank you. We like to
Can
do
I,
that
wait,
stuff.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I never had a chance to ask my question, which, I just didn't understand the whole framework. So the Discovering Justice curriculum, it's not as, it sounds like it's a group, or it's created by, I just don't understand what it was exactly and how it fits into both the state, the state standards, and then how we're making sure, I mean, it sounds really great. It's just, how do we make sure that we're getting the same type of exposure for all of our students every year? Or do you see what I'm saying? It's like it's a good special thing,
Yes.
but
I
we
think
want
the
people
field
to be
trip-
getting the same sorts of things every year.
So you mean like the field trip as a culminating activity?
Yeah, well, also just the whole, I mean, I don't understand how this thing is set up. And that's what there was talk about a K, first I heard grades 1 through 5, or a K version of curriculum, but I don't understand where the curriculum was coming from.
I'm not a literacy coach, so I can only kind of speak from what I know, but I believe the literacy coaches have worked with Denny, and Denny, the people when we were there knew Denny very well, so I think Denny works with them through the civics and the social studies kind of connection that they have, and so our curriculum through Denny, he matched up with our literacy people, so I believe that's how it kind of came about. And then the field trip is, if I'm correct, because I know there's, second grade does something, and then third grade does something, so it's already mapped out for us as the teachers. So I believe the second grade does the Japanese with the folk tales, and third grade does something else, and fifth grade does something else. So I can't really speak exactly how.
Yeah, I'm not sure you're the person who's supposed to be answering
Exactly.
this
I don't want to.
question.
I don't want to
I'm
answer
not-
you.
And I'm not trying to put you
Yeah.
on the
No,
spot.
no, no.
I just
And I don't want to mislead you
I didn't
either. So.
understand, so I didn't.
Well, we are trying to do more and more interdisciplinary units. All of the units that are developed align to the state standards at that grade level in that content. So the issue of the Goldilocks is certainly a story that our first graders would probably know, but it's also just tying all of these together. So nothing is not aligned. What about all the other students in the district? They can still have the same unit, but they may not get the culminating activity to go to Moakley Courthouse.
Right.
They'd have to do something in class or in their school. But it doesn't, I think what I heard you say, maybe that's not what you're thinking, is that only Stratton got to do this
I
unit.
I didn't understand how this fit into things. That's what, I didn't understand where the framework was coming from and then how this fit into it. And I mean, maybe I missed something early on, I'm sorry, but I just didn't understand.
We have a sequence with literacy that has different types of writing that they have to do at each grade level, and the types of reading that they would do. Some of it is fiction, some of it's nonfiction. Clearly, Goldilocks is in the fiction.
Right.
But there are also corresponding social studies standards. And what we have been intentionally doing is trying to do interdisciplinary, because if everything is done separately, there's just not enough time.
And when,
And it's a little bit more authentic to try to combine the two anyway.
right. So with part of our part of this, we began with showing them different symbols of the United States. So we were showing them the White House. We were showing them and asking them questions. What do you know about the White House? We asked them, who makes the rules for who do you think makes the rules for the United States? Who makes the rules at your house? And we were trying to help them understand the connection of rules and what's fair. And then as that, kind of trickled down, then we talked about rules and what's fair with Goldilocks. Is it fair to walk into someone's house? Can you just do that? No, you can't just do that. So making that kind of come together, and then brought in the literacy piece of it. So putting those two worlds together is what's appropriate for first grade. And so how second grade does it, I can't really speak to that.
Right,
But
okay, that's very helpful. I mean, the combination.
One more comment on that is that we're trying to do this with ELA, literacy, and science. We're trying, in that case, we could use a science topic to be a research question, or it could be opinion writing, or making an argument of something, persuading someone that you want to talk about why we should recycle in Arlington, that type of thing. So the more we can do 2-fers, 3-fers, and see the integration, so instead of having silos in our curriculum, because that's really the effort here.
It also links to social studies curriculum in first grade as they look at and learn about folk tales and legends and stories from long ago. So as they take that and they link it to the opinion writing piece, this would also be able to be wrapped into a civics lesson. So I think that, all three of those
and they saw that connection. The kids
ideas
saw that,
and those concepts,
that's
right.
like when we were doing
Exactly.
Lucy Calkins trying to persuade someone to get the certain book at a library.
Right.
They saw the connection.
So I think that by adding that different perspective, by showing different versions of Goldilocks, and then using that as part of the opinion piece, that is where you make the connections. And that's where that creativity comes in as well with the curriculum, where you're not following the standards like lock, stop, step, but you're following ways that you can introduce certain concepts such as civics, which is going to be an emphasis as we move forward with the new social studies curriculum. So I think that this was that type of, when you talk about, is it linked to the standards, that's where they're seeing that entry point, and they're saying, oh, we can take this, integrate it with ELA, and then we can have this fabulous lesson where we're teaching our students about civics.
Great, thank you. It makes much more sense to me now. Thank you.
Thank you for this wonderful PowerPoint. Since this is on Novus, it can be public. You spent a lot of time on it, and I just wanted, sorry we couldn't.
Meg Hayes.
We had a technical problem.
Good job, Allie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Okay, so moving on. Okay, this next one is the Arlington Commission for Arts and Culture. Let me go up to this. So I'm bringing this forward. I'm asking if we can have a motion to appoint Caitlin Longmire to the Arlington Commission for Arts and Culture. This is coming forward in a little bit of an unusual method. What happened was the town manager sent me, the chair, a note asking us to approve the candidate. If the school committee could approve the candidate for the arts, for the Arlington ACAC, that the current co-chairs, Adria Arch and Stephanie
Marlon
Curiel, had recommended that she be appointed for the current vacancy on the commission. Procedurally, I was kind of confused because usually we have our own process. And I got stuck. For this, so ultimately I decided for this appointment only that I would bring it to the full committee and recommend that we accept the town manager's recommendation and appoint this candidate. Her resume is superb. She's had key recommendations by the co-chairs. I didn't want the procedure to get in the way of allowing an excellent person to serve our town in this way. If anyone on the school committee is not happy with this, I hope they'll make it clear that their concern is the procedure. I purposely didn't ask the candidate to come, partly because I wasn't sure when we would be doing it because of the executive session before and stuff, but also because this is a little unusual. And I also think, I don't know if you need a motion, but that we should, perhaps the community relations can make it more, figure out a more clear path for getting appointments to this. Because first I didn't even understand why we had an appointment that we didn't know about. So the whole thing was kind of confusing. So
I move approval of Ms. Caitlin Longmire to the Arlington Commission for Arts and Culture.
Okay. Second. Okay. Any discussion? Dr. Seuss?
So I had a chance to speak to Stephanie Marlin-Curel, and I think that this confusion was a confusion, not ill intent. From there, this is a new committee, but there are, for feeder committees that are going into creating this one, they sort of discovered late in the game that there was a school committee appointment. In the past, they've actually done, the feeder committees have done school committee appointments like this, or it's happened before, and so they just really didn't understand the process. So I do think it would be actually helpful, I think, to come up with a list of all of our appointments and the dates. I think that would be great, because partly I think, I believe them in the past it's been confusing, because I think we've often been confused about the process, and so I think that would be, that's a great suggestion going forward, and I'm happy to work on that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Mr. Schlickman?
I concur with my learned colleague. There is confusion on what we appoint and when we appoint them. And this is not the first time we've gotten a recommendation from the town manager, the town side, for one of our appointments. Not that this is a bad thing. I think we had one on the Human Rights Commission earlier. It's not that it's a bad thing if they're the agency collecting the applications. But I think that if the legislation coming from town meeting says that the school committee has an appointment, there's a reason why the school committee has an appointment, so that we should exercise that a little more boldly, or ask the town meeting to go and make it a town manager's appointment if that's sort of the intent. But just on the other, I read through the resume. What a fantastic candidate!
Right. That's where I was like.
Yes, absolutely.
So, okay, Mr. Carter.
Yeah. So this one is a little bit unusual because the language is different. So it says the respective appointing authorities, one of which is the Board of Selectmen, one of which is the school committee, shall consider for appointment but need not appoint persons recommended by the commission. So that's a little bit different than our usual process.
Interesting.
But anyways, we should keep a list of
list.
all the rules, because they're all different and all confusing.
Yeah, and maybe we can figure out how we'll handle this in the future as you create your list.
Yeah, okay.
Because I was stuck. Mr. Hayner?
Just for clarification, in these appointments, the school committee appoints one, the selectmen appoint, is that part of this confusion?
I'm not, I think that's part of it, is I'm not sure.
Right, okay. So hopefully Jennifer will sort all this out and find out who we appoint, when we appoint, things of that nature.
Yes.
That'll be good.
Yes, okay.
Oh, I mean, what I explained to Stephanie is, because there isn't actually town-wide understanding of this either, that the purpose of having all these different appointing authorities is that so that no one group sort of puts their friends on. Right? I mean, that's the idea, is to have independent.
What I've seen in the past is, like, the school committee would have an appointee, the selectmen would have an appointee.
Yeah.
But this sounded like we were both appointing the same person. It'll get straightened out.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was,
Fine.
Okay.
anyway, okay.
Call the vote.
I'm not sure it's to make sure that we don't get friends on, but also just to ensure a variety of voices.
A
on
variety of
that
voices,
committee.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously, thank you. And at this point, we are voting to approve the calendar, the school calendar. I thought we already did this. Are we just looking at the calendar, or are we voting?
This is the vote.
Second reading.
This is, okay.
I move approval of the school calendar.
I thought-
Second.
Okay,
Can I
okay,
make a comment?
okay, first, Mr. Thielman moves, can I have a second?
Bill did.
Oh, Mr. Hayner seconded, okay. Dr. Bodie.
Well, yes, this is the second reading. We want to have final approval. Since we met the last time, there, an issue has come up with community education. And the issue is that they run classes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of every week. And they made some assumptions to when conferences were going to be. But the issue is it's very hard for them to have, say, 2 Wednesdays out of the calendar where they can't hold classes in the high school building, or Tuesday or Thursday for that matter. So we have a situation where, you know, per the request of the school committee, we really are actively trying not to schedule high school events the same night as a school committee meeting. But here's the dilemma that we have. It's in November. The community education, right now we have the high school having their conferences on Wednesday night, but that's a problem for community education because they've had other Wednesday nights due to a holiday that's a conflict. So what they have requested is that they switch nights, so that high school conferences be on the 15th, which is a school committee night, and then community ed would have their classes on Wednesday night. It is not the only night for conferences for the high school. There is another night. In fact, we got to switch those as well, but because of the switch. One of the things that Ms. Rothenberg has suggested, she'll put cones outside for the school committee on that night because of parking. She realizes that would be an inconvenience, but it would help immensely to the community ed programming to have that switch. But if that switch is made, then when you look at December, we have to switch the 4th and the 6th. So the high school conferences then would go to the 4th of December, a Tuesday night, and the high school principal is willing to do that for community education so that they don't have to miss a Thursday night. So essentially, it's just a switch. You can still approve the calendar tonight with that amendment, and then we'll fix it before it goes online, if you approve it.
Do we need a motion?
You already have the
Need a
motion.
It's a motion.
We have a
Motion's
motion.
already
Do we
in the-
need a motion for the amendment?
Amendment, yes.
Yes.
So,
So I move that we adopt the amendment described by Dr. Bodie.
Okay.
Wait a minute, hold on, now I'm confused. Did we move to adopt the calendar, and are we now having an amendment to the calendar
Yes.
Yes.
moved? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we need a second for the amendment.
Second.
Okay.
So, my question is, I mean, both things are important in community ed, but the high school is our primary purpose here. They're not, is Matt worried about losing any parents?
No.
No, he's not. Okay, fine.
He actually prefers the 15th. Teachers prefer Thursday nights for conferences.
Yeah.
But, so what would happen then for the high school, they'd have one, which is on Thursday, and one conference night, which is on Tuesday. They recognize that they want to have them on different nights anyway,
Yeah.
because some parents might not be able to make a Thursday night.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that,
No, he's fine with
fine.
it.
Okay.
Mr. Hayner?
My only concern, I think Dr. Bodie already addressed it, is as long as these changes, they're published correctly so that people don't show up at the wrong nights at the wrong place, that's all. I think you've already addressed that.
Okay. Any other comments about the calendar?
I-
Ms. Morgan?
I'm
No, Ms. Morgan, because you've already spoken once.
Just for, under first day for students, this is very minor, just to be consistent with everything, there should be a comma after 12 before Tuesday.
First day.
Under first day for students, middle column, grade 1 through 12. It probably should be grades 1 through 12,
Oh.
but that's fine. But after 12, there needs to be a comma before Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay. Anything, Mr. Hayner?
I've said it before, I have issues with the first day of school being a primary day, half day. Thank you.
Okay. Anything more? Okay. All in favor of the all in favor of the amendment as so presented?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, Mr. Schlickman abstains. So the calendar is being so amended. All in favor of the calendar as so amended?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any, any against? Okay, so the calendar passes unanimously. The amendment had passed with one exception, being Mr. Schlickman. Okay?
Do we need to approve the amended Upton calendar?
What do we?
In the packet, the next one's the amended Upton calendar.
Yeah.
It's really
Oh, I didn't see the.
nice pastel colors.
These are different ideas to get us, just to give us an idea.
Okay, so what should we be doing with the different ideas? I mean, what should we be doing with this?
I had requested that
Okay,
to see if there were better ideas. The only one that I think is worth considering is the one that goes the other direction in landscape.
does someone want
Yes,
to,
that would be the only one, I think, that
Which one?
this.
Lexington and Belmont are both.
Lexington, you
Yeah,
like.
particularly Lexington with the changes under each month instead of all being listed down the middle.
That's nice.
That might be something to think about, but
okay. Does,
Yeah, that is not.
do we want to talk about, does one of the subcommittees want to talk about this, or?
Community relations. I move we refer this to community relations.
Okay, do we have a
Who's chair?
second?
You chair?
Jennifer.
Everything goes there.
Do you want to, okay. Do you actually want a motion, or?
Yeah, well, I'll
No,
move
no,
to
no, I
amend
meant,
community relations.
I'm asking,
I second.
Okay.
okay.
I'm not going to sit here and discuss it now.
No.
It's too much to
Any discussion? I agree. I know that sometimes we've talked about calendar in policy, but this is more of how are you presenting it to the
Yeah,
public?
no, I get it. I
Oh,
get it.
okay,
It's
okay.
we have other things to do, but
Any,
yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
No, it's okay.
Okay,
Said aye.
okay, so that's unanimous, and community relations is going to take up
Okay.
doing how we present the calendar, not. Okay, moving on. At this point, we are going to review the AHS education plan, which reflects the MSBA revisions following the April 24th PDP submission to the MSBA. So the reason I asked for this to be put on is that it wasn't clear how substantial, when this came in to the pipeline, it wasn't clear how substantial the revisions would be, and if they would be substantial enough that we would need to consider a reapproval. Because the school committee was the body that approved the education plan, although the building committee will approve the PDP submission, the preliminary design program, or PSR submission, which includes the education plan as part of it. So since then, we've had discussions with Lori Coles, and also questions have gone through Skanska to the MSBA, and my understanding of the current thing is that the building committee will approve it as they approve the PSR, right? Because it's
PSR.
included in that. PSR.
Preferred schematic.
Yeah,
Preferred
preferred
Schematic
schematic.
design.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. Report. They do not feel we have to approve they don't feel that the school committee needs to approve the updated education plan, but that we can if we want to. I'm mostly trying to make sure that we're not caught sometime in August when they say, wait, but. And and also I wanted you folks to know, Mr. Schlickman.
Yeah. So the changes to, the edits to the original plan are the items that are gray.
Yes.
Right.
No, there are only
few.
additions, there are no deletions?
No, they're more along the lines of clarifications. After we submitted the PDP report with the preliminary design report, the MSBA came back with pages of questions and that we had to complete answers to that clarified different things in the ed plan. And so those went back to them, and then the next stage in that process was for us to do some amendments and putting those answers, so to speak, into the ed plan. So it's really in response to their questions that those are there. There's nothing that's deleted.
So that, I read through the every grade thing, and I obviously only saw it today, and I didn't have time to read the whole document carefully, but I took time to read the things that are in gray with the assumption that those are the changes. And these make a lot of sense, and I don't think it changes alterably the intent of the proposal. In fact, a couple of them, I think, strengthen it. So I just wanted to make sure that what I thought was going on, that the gray text was an addition and not a substantive change.
Right.
It was really happening.
Correct.
There's-
And if there had,
Yeah, there's nothing substantial. I don't think there's anything substantial. Yeah, I think it's important to
The
understand.
only thing I thought was kind of a fairly large, I felt it was more of a change, was on page 58, where it's talking about learning beyond school walls, and it goes into AHS's approach about interdisciplinary courses and stuff. And that was, when I did the same thing that Paul did. I went through and read the highlighted revisions. So I think partly I wanted to be sure that all the committee members were aware of what was going on. Second, I think it would be nice to take a vote just so that no one can ever say we didn't, that things are different and we didn't approve it, so that,
I second Paul's motion.
okay. Is there any further discussion about this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. And we checked, we don't have to give them minutes or anything about this, but I'm just,
It's there.
it's not going to be, if there's any problems, it's not going to be on school committee.
Yeah.
So next we have the official name of this Gibbs School. Dr. Bodie.
I move that we call it the Gibbs School.
Well, let's hear what Dr. Bodie has to say.
we can do exactly that. You have to have an official name in the Department of Education, and we submitted Gibbs School. But at the time that we submitted it, we didn't really ask to have your blessing on that name, and so that's the purpose of today. We had to do a turnaround in order to be able to get all the IDs that you have to have in DESE and set up the, Mr. Schlickman's very aware of all
done
that.
that.
Yes.
I thought,
Name the Gibbs School, Gibbs
Wait a
School.
minute.
okay,
already
this
got a
is-
motion.
Yeah, but I also want to say, part of it, I had been, my impression from our previous meeting had been that the official name was Gibbs Sixth Grade School. And that was I wasn't sure that was the name that we wanted, but actually the documentation that you have here says Gibbs School. And
Right.
so, anyone else have anything to speak to or against naming the Gibbs School the Gibbs School? Okay.
No, just,
Oh, Dr. Seuss?
just to make sure that we then make it consistent in everything that we do. I mean, that was a question. Just so we make it consistent, that this is a name, we
Right.
just use it
It's a name.
same way every time.
Okay. So, all
Did
in
you want to
favor?
name it Hogwarts? Paul, did you?
Consistently.
I think it was a great
Yes.
name, yeah.
That'd be fun.
Hogwarts would be great.
Okay.
Motion to amend the motion to
That would, kids would just be
Hogwarts.
so
You made the
psyched.
motion, you can't amend your motion.
So psyched.
Mr. Hayner. What- Okay. All in favor of naming the Gibbs School the Gibbs School?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the Gibbs School is unanimously named the Gibbs School.
Good.
Okay.
Next is a vote to finalize the FY19 budget, or voting the
Changes.
the changes. Yeah, the what I'm reading doesn't make sense, but let me start. Dr. Bodie, did you want to speak to this because Mr. Denizio isn't here, or?
Wait, yes, he's not in today. What you have is a summary, however, from Mr. Denizio about the FY fiscal year 19 budget, which originally we had identified all of the components of that amount of money, which was $71,785,331. Since then, we have had two funding increases. One has been an increase for FY18 in circuit breaker of $222,000. We also have had an increase in funding due to Chapter 70 money of $292,000. So we had identified what would be additions what we originally thought we were going to have an additional $242,000, and then we had identified two tiers of increases if we got additional money beyond that. So we did get additional money beyond it, but pretty much, or I should say not in any of them, but very few of the things in the tiered list made it because of our added kindergartens that we've needed to add in the last couple of weeks, and then of course the teaching assistant that would be also assigned to a kindergarten. So what you have here is the summary list of what the $292,000 will be allocated to. The increase in circuit breaker will cover the cost of anticipated collective bargaining agreements that we are, in fact, approved two of them tonight. So that's pretty much just a summary of where we are. I don't believe there's anything that you need to vote on.
No, there is.
There is?
I move,
Okay.
yes, I move approval of the
Memo?
FY19 budget in the amount of $72,400,223 as set forth in the spending categories.
Second?
Okay. Do you want to speak to your motion at all?
No, I mean, we're required, those are the current categories that we currently approve under, and then as changes occur during the year, they're supposed to do a budget transfer between those categories. In policy, we've talked about, going forward, maybe changing that, but for now, this is the current categories, and so John put all the funds, including, I believe, the salary funds in the right categories as of now, and this is where he wants to be going forward to start the year.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak to or against the motion? I had one question. I had thought there was a question last meeting about whether a nurse was still included in the funding, and I thought the answer had been yes, but I'm not seeing it on the list here.
No, it was no.
No, okay.
No.
I didn't
We
understand that.
have 2.0 FTEs at the high school. They're just in different locales in the high school.
Okay, I thought there was something beyond that, and I had understood the answer to be yes last time, and I don't see it here, so we can ask Mr. Denizio, I'll send him an email and ask what happened with that.
I think the issue is around whether we're going to add any nursing staff here.
Okay.
But, we can look at that and when we come back in the fall and talking about the different transfers that might be necessary, we could talk about that.
Okay. Okay, anyone else have questions? Okay, all in favor of the budget and in the categories as so listed on this document?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that passes unanimously. And at this point, we are at the superintendent goals for 2018-19.
Just so for people who are listening, the process that we have first of all, for the evaluation, the superintendent is in the school committee policy book. But in terms of goals that you identify as an educator, this is something that has evolved from the new educator evaluation system. All of our teachers, administrators, and for that matter, anybody who holds a certification working in a school district needs to identify a student achievement goal for the year and also a practice goal. For the teachers, that happens by October 1, and sometimes they're group goals. They can be that, and some people take that approach, which is something actually we encourage them to do. So being an educator and part of the evaluation system, I also have to provide to my supervisor, which is the school board, what my suggested practice goal would be and academic achievement, well, a student achievement goal. So let me talk about the student achievement goal. My role in a student achievement goal is what I do as a superintendent to improve the achievement of our students. And one of the things that we have been focusing on this past year and will continue to focus on next year as identified in our district goals is the work around social emotional learning, the work with cultural competency. And the research that we have looked at as a district and individually schools shows in many mega-analysis that's been, that you can actually research yourself, shows that there is a significant gain in student achievement when you address social emotional learning. It's very hard for students to learn in a situation in which they don't feel safe, supported, welcomed, in an environment that they can learn. And that's not to say that we do not have a robust curriculum. Does not mean that we are not continuing to focus on curriculum. As you heard tonight, we certainly are. In fact, one of our district goals is continuing that work, because that is our work, too, is to be constantly improving the curriculum that we offer students. But we are compelled as a district to move forward with more focus on social emotional learning, in that terms of what goes on in our classrooms, the culture of our schools, and professional development. So my role is a role of helping to resource that, to manage it, to support people in their work. And that is really the focus. Now, what I gave you as a sample still needs some more work this summer, because we're, as a group, working on the action plans for next year. But it gives you an idea of what that particular focus is. And so one of the benchmarks, of course, that we're going to be looking at as we go forward is, are we seeing a closing of the achievement gap? Are we seeing an increase in student academic achievement as measured by standardized tests? Our theory is that we will, and it's certainly the goal that we would have. So that's the nature of that particular goal. The other goal is what you do, the practice goal. What are you going to do in your day-to-day that you think is important in terms of proving your practice in your role? And this year I had one that I was actually very excited about, and it's not actually something entirely different than what I've always done, but it had a little bit more focus to it, and that is doing more learning walks with principals in schools. And just given the time demands this year, this was not very successful, and we can talk more about that in the fall. It doesn't mean that I was not meeting with principals. In fact, this year I probably met principals even more than I have in the past, because there's been so many things to be working on. But that is one area that I did not do as much of as classroom visits, which was actually very sad for me, because it's one of the things that I enjoyed the very most of the work that I do, is to be in classrooms. So it's really sort of a redo, a refocus, and I think it's helpful to have it, and I think this is true for teachers and administrators, to put down something as a practice goal that keeps you focused on something that you think is important in terms of improving what you do. And in terms of student achievement, being in the classrooms, I want to see more firsthand the kind of work that we're doing. And so that's basically the nature of that particular goal. Now, my goals under the evaluation system is that the school committee can also suggest goals. What we've done in the past is had those be related to our district goals. So that's something that we can talk about. What we've done in the past is have a retreat, and I think that we do need a retreat at some point. There's a number of things that probably need to be looked at and talked about, but we can certainly focus on that at another time. But what I need to do for part of the policy is to present to you what my goals would be for next year.
Okay. Mr. Hayner.
First off, I'd like to apologize to Dr. Bodie. I set out a rough draft copy of a goal that I'd like you to consider, and for some reason, the copy didn't get to you until just like today. So there's a hard copy at your table. I sent it out to the committee. I think got it late this afternoon. That's when I put it. This is a draft. It's got a lot of holes in it. The idea is, it should be superintendent's communication goal. The idea is basically the superintendent will communicate effectively to various stakeholders regarding progress with district goals. And then it suggests key actions. And there's a myriad of benchmarks. I took this offline. Some of them are applicable, some of them are not. I'm not suggesting this whole thing there, but it just making communication another active goal during the year. And I'd ask you to take a look at it. I'd ask the committee to take a look at it. I'm not married to any part of it. I'm looking just to have a superintendent goal on communication to all parts of all the stakeholders, the teachers, parents, and the community in general.
Okay. Does anyone else want to speak to anything about the goals? Dr. Seuss.
I want to speak to a little bit to each one. One, I'm excited to see, once again, the goal of visits and learning walks with each school. I think that's a great idea and important. I have some questions about the student achievement goal. So one is that some of the key actions seem to be things that we already have in place. And so the question is, which of the things are new and which are things we already have in place? Two, I'm confused about the 8 hours of cultural competency. Is it just going to be offered but not mandated? Is there any mandate at all, which is sort of what we've been talking about?
It's mandated.
So this is mandated cultural competency training for all teachers. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is great. That's something I think the school committees wanted to see. And then finally, with respect to Mr. Hayner's proposal, I like the idea of a communication goal. I think this is very vague. I just think it's very hard to share and help all stakeholders understand district progress. I just don't. It feels as written too vague, and I'd want to take some more time to craft something like that. Sort of my gut feeling about this. I'm not opposed to the idea of a communication goal, but I think it needs some wordsmithing.
My purpose was to bring it to the table. As Dr. Bodie said, she's going to be working on refining the goals between now and, I assume, September. We'd see a final for the others.
Yes.
So maybe that's something a couple of us can get together and work on during the summer. I'd be happy. Jennifer, if you want to work on it together, be happy.
I have a lot to do this summer.
Won't be till August, I promise.
Okay. Anyone else have comments about the goals? Okay, then I have a couple quick questions. Let me start with the practice goal. I'm just talking wordsmithing. It says, I will visit each school a minimum of 3 times between September 18 and June 19, which will include a meeting with the principal and classroom visits. Are you meaning that each visit will include meeting with the principal and doing a classroom visit? Or it wasn't clear to me from how it's written.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I had a lot of actually visits to schools this year. It's just that they sometimes time didn't allow for classroom visits.
Right,
So I need to make that clear. I
Yeah,
get what
yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah, that's just, that was the only thing on that. On the student achievement goal, under the evidence of, first, I support the idea behind all of this, but I wondered if part of the evidence of success for, could be two different things. One is a description of what SEL instruction comprises, and that could, I'm thinking more, right now, we have a hard, or at least I have a hard time explaining what we're doing for SEL instruction and what it means, what we're trying to teach the kids. And to me, it feels like just having a description of this, which could be for the website, could be for a school committee presentation, but I want it something that's understandable by the public.
Yep.
That would be really helpful. And then also a description of what culturally competent instruction means. I mean, just what I'm trying to get to, we need to have better understanding and be able to explain to other people what we mean by these things. And I just feel like that fits in with what you're talking about
Yeah,
there.
it does.
Okay.
Yeah, and this
So-
is not fully formed, hopefully, not hopefully, but you will have a more formed description of all this by
Sure,
September.
sure. I just thought that these are things that could
Yeah,
be
no, it's a
part
great
of
suggestion.
the subs, and that they would be helpful in other respects too. Ms. Morgan?
Just to echo what Kirsty said, I think, I see the culturally responsive, which is sort of echoing what we have in our district goals, and then all of a sudden, under number 1, key action, I'm like, oh, we're back to cultural competency, which is fine if that's what we're gonna do. That word doesn't come up in our district goals this year, which, so I was like, oh, are we gonna use, like, there was a lot of discussion about whether we were gonna use cultural bias or culturally responsive, and so if we're gonna put it in your goals, which I'm not necessarily opposed to doing, I just want it to be really intentional that we're gonna put it in there, or that you're gonna put it in there, and we're gonna go along with it. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay, and also maybe that we're using our words all in the same way. I mean, I think, to me, culturally responsive practices make sense in the classroom. Some of it, again, I feel like there's definitions, everything's very nebulous, and I'd like to have it, this is what we mean by that, this is what we mean, and stuff, so it'd be easier for me. Okay. Any other comments about the goal? So at this point, we don't need, this was just bringing it forward, we don't need a motion or anything.
I don't think so. Our person on policy says, I needed to bring the goals to you by the end of June.
Okay.
I personally would let you, once they've been refined, and probably in September, we then vote on it, make it official for the.
Oh, yeah, I meant, right now, we don't need to vote on it. Right, okay, thank you.
Sorry,
Ms. Morgan,
one more,
sorry.
like, small point. So, under goal objective 2.1 that we approved, we were talking about, I assume that under that goal objective is gonna be something to the extent of 8 mandated hours of professional learning, is gonna be in one of the key actions we're eventually gonna see.
We're gonna discuss this, the district goals.
I just want to make sure that whatever key action ends up in the district goals is the same language as number 4 under the key actions of your goals, because I think they're the same thing. So if we're doing culturally responsive in the goals, if that's the key, I don't have a horse in the race of what it is, but I really want the language to be the same in whatever you put as the key action here and as whatever you put the key action there, because it seems to me as though they're the same thing. Which is fine, just let's make him the same.
Anything more? Okay. So thank you for getting these to us. Moving on, we have superintendent's report.
I have a long report. You ready?
Okay.
All right. First of all, I just want to make sure it's always a good idea to mention that the last day of school is Monday. We are expecting our students to be here on Monday, except for unless the high school, you have a makeup day. Dismissal is at 11:30. There is no lunch. And it's on our website, but I realize it's now down a little bit, but just, I think everybody knows this. Principals probably send that out as a reminder. All right, so just a general announcement I will send out to everybody. We now have a new EdCode director. The contract negotiations have concluded, and we have Nadine Ekstrom, who has currently is the director of curriculum in Brookline, but she had previously been a superintendent in Berlin-Boylston. She was, before that, a director of special education teacher, and even before that, she owned her own business. So all of the different components of that job, she has done in different ways. So we're very excited that she's going to be joining EDCO, and I will send you out more of a formal announcement about that. But it's great because it's been quite a long search process. It began in January, and we're very pleased with the results. All right. I think I want to go right away to the buildings because, and in fact, I hope that Mr. Thilman and Dr. Allison Ampe will help with this. It's really important, I think, to have more opportunities when we can to be able to talk about what the options are that are facing us. And we have a new alternative, which not everybody has seen, to one of the, all the boards are behind, so we have alternatives.
Two new alternatives, right? 2A and 2B.
Well, 2A is what had been. 2A was the original.
No, 2.
It's similar.
They're very similar.
They're very similar.
It's not exactly.
2A is
Get
not
on?
to be.
Yeah, we,
You can't get it on at all. No.
do we have the boards?
It'll be in good shape in the new building.
What?
It'll look good in the new building.
Okay,
Describe
so what's happening, that there are 4 options before us, 1, 2, 3, and 4, but the 2 is adjusted to what is now 2B? Is that what you're saying? No.
There's 5 options,
Oh, there's 5, so we're adding a 2B to the,
2A and 2B.
so 2 is being split into 2A and 2B, so now
No.
we've gone from 4 to 5.
No, we have 2
No,
or
no,
6 options.
No, we have, okay. We have the original 4 options, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's also 2 other options presented for 2A and 2B.
Okay.
2A varies slightly from option 2 in that instead of being a block going down, it moves out a little bit. It's similar enough to 2 that we can vote 2 and we could build 2A, and they're essentially the same building. 2B is not similar enough to 2, so it's its own option. So that's why Jeff's saying that we have 5. So those are what we have to pick from.
We do have the boards here, and
I don't think we have
Oh.
boards.
Here you go.
Oh.
Ta-da!
Hey.
Magic touch.
we have another job for you.
You got a new job, the AV person.
Other items demanded by the superintendent, the catchphrase on the job description.
It's the final bullet in your job description, Allison.
And all other things.
All other
Right.
things, all other tasks is assigned by the.
And a
your
partridge
supervisor.
in a pear tree.
So 2A, if you look at the original 2, and we do have the board over here, is essentially what 2 was like before. But one of the issues that had come up was that, is there a way to come forward on the lawn a little bit more to create a building that would be able to be built and then moved into? And could the auditorium come forward back onto the front of the building? Because right now in couple of in various options, the 2 being one of them, the auditorium is in the back of the building and access from the back. So you'd have to come down Mill Street or the curved drive here and park back there to go in. But there has been some conversation about whether it would be important to now have it be on the front lawn. So what you see here, what is Forgot about that.
Now she's really AV now.
Yeah.
So out here is the auditorium. This remains all green area, as does, there's still some green along this whole piece right here. So it is shifting some of the buildings out into the front. And one of the advantages, of course, if you build on the front of the school on the lawn, you create swing space right away.
Where would the driveway be? How would,
Well,
on this?
this is actually an interesting issue, because it's important. 'Cause, Ms. Coles and I met with the fire department, the acting chief at the moment, to talk about how all of the different options fared in terms of access for fire department. And one of the things that came out of that discussion is, so where does the ambulance go? And if the nurse's office is going to be here, because this is the administration part of the building, would in any of these diagrams, could the ambulance come quickly to the back of the building? Would that be the access point? Or do we need to reconsider doing some kind of only emergency access circular here, not a circular for general drop-off? So that's something that has to be considered. It's not something that we'd have to change all these options for, but certainly in the schematic, whatever we pick, we're going to have to be able to think about and plan for where the nurse's office would be relative to where's the best pickup by an ambulance. And I would say, Mr. Gerald can also confirm, I would say at least every week, or if not 2 weeks, we have, this is not an infrequent occurrence. That always can be something, an injury or some other reasons that an ambulance would be here. So this is the new 2B, and the committee is considering this along with all the other options, which we have gone through before, and if you want to, we could review them, what the options are. One of the things that was rather amazing is the response that we had to the survey, and I give Dr. Allison Ampe and Amy Spears, who's on our subcommittee for communication, a lot of credit for getting that all up and running, having the survey there for people, summaries of all of the different options. And we had over 1,000 people respond.
Great.
1,246.
12. Does that include the high school responses
That
too?
was,
Yeah.
that was everybody, all
Right,
in.
because we sent one out separately just to high school students and teachers, and we got 100 and something there.
Yeah.
And then we had all the other people on the, responding, 1,000 online, but then there was also the people that were at the forum as well. So we had quite a bit of feedback on this, and some of the most important, let me go back over here. And I think you probably have a lot of that memorized too, what the findings were, because you did a lot of collating. But I think one of the things that stood out in the survey was how important it was to the vast majority of people that we keep some green space on the front lawn, because this, you're coming down Mass Ave, this is an asset, a green asset to the town that's highly visible. So that was the vast majority of people, if not, it was just, and that would be in the category of all or some. So the only option that does not have any green in the front would be option 4, which builds right on the sidewalk. There would be more green behind, potentially, and there might be another field that could be created, but that would not be accessed from Mass Ave, and probably not available to people even during the school day, because that would be part of the school property during the school day. So that's where we are at the moment. But in terms of where we're going and what is the decision process, the building committee met Tuesday night for a long time, went through these options, a number of reports, including the one that I gave with Dr. Janker and Bill McCarthy about, well, which of these options present the best match for the educational program. And the truth is that they all have all the key elements in terms of programming, in part because we gave our architect the list of all the things that needed to be there, and she made sure they were all there. So then it came down to, well, which ones maybe has the best adjacency or the best security lines, potentially is more welcoming, had, as I said, the best adjacencies if you had, you know, the performing arts or the makerspace to the STEAM area. And we went through the diagrams for, I think in total 4 or 5 hours working on this. And in the end of at the end of it, there was the option number 1 did exceeded what the expectations were for adjacencies. But that's one of the most important factors, you know, of course, is how it meets the program. But the truth is, all of them meet the program, just some a little bit better than others. So then we went into sustainability report in terms of which one would be more sustainable. And one of those aspects would be how you could add on in the future. We don't know what the future brings in Arlington. We could go back to seeing class sizes of 700 like they were back in the 70s, 80s. I don't think that will happen, but we're almost approaching 600 right now, so you never know in our kindergarten class. So which ones could add on to? The one thing that we do know in all of these, the option that will not be considered is adding floors later. And the reason why is that when you want to think about future adding floors, you've got to build a different kind of foundation and supports than you would if you were just doing 5 stories instead of 6. And I know in a building project I was involved in, I don't know, 20 years ago when I was doing one there at another district, I think it would cost, in those days, it cost another $200,000 to fortify the foundation, and that was a long time ago. So it's fairly expensive. So the solution for our architect would be, where could you always add on? And just like we did at Thompson, it was planned for that if we ever needed to add on, we just didn't think it was going to be in 3 years. Where would you do it in a very in an easy way? And that Thompson adding on was a lot easier. Not that Hardy's not working well, it is. But it was actually planned that way, and this project would be planned that way as well. And she brought in where the most likely add-ons would be. So the one that all 3 of them had, the first 3 options had fairly decent options for adding on. The one that did not was option 4, which was the large building on the front lawn, because you can't go up. So you'd have to go back. And if you keep in mind what the back of it is, there's a 20-foot drop, about 20 feet from the building. And so you have to create a bridge over to a building that would be in the back parking lot. That's the way you would add on. So the committee is looking at all of these right now. Jeff Thielman, who is the chair of the committee, suggested, and I thought it was a great idea, to have people working on their pros and cons, because in thinking about it, you have to really think analytically about what makes the most sense, and all that's going to be done in the next couple days. But our decision has to be made by the 28th. So we have a meeting scheduled next Tuesday. I suspect it'll probably be a fairly long meeting.
Yes.
Yes?
So,
Well, it was 3 hours the other night.
Yeah, it was 3 hours. So,
Yeah.
I think this is my take on things based on my read of the committee, is that the committee's heard a lot of presentations and asked a lot of questions. And so now it's the committee's time over the next 2 nights to speak. And, you know, so we'll see. I'm trying to think about how we're having a call on Monday to get some thinking about how to structure that so that people can, but I think it's very important that every single member, every single person on the committee have as much time as they need to articulate what they think about each of the options. And so that's the next stage of the process.
Yeah. And the committee has every report. They have in summary of all of the surveys. They have the sustainability report. They have the report on the education plan. They have all of this. And
but we're still waiting on some stuff, right? We're waiting on traffic, we're waiting on more financial.
An alternative to 3 was
We-
the other.
we
We're
won't
waiting
have
on an
traffic.
alternative to 3 with the auditorium in the front, which is almost done. We're waiting on traffic. I'm not sure we're going to have that in time.
Oh,
We're not
okay.
going to have that. And we might get more refined numbers, but not much more refined than what we have. So we're going to have to make a decision based on what we have. And the most important thing, I think, based on just what I read, but I could be wrong, is that people really want to go from questioning the experts to articulating their thoughts and feelings on the options. And they want time to do that. And so we're going to try to figure out the best way to make that happen so we get to a decision.
Ms. Morgan?
So I have a couple of things. One, because I know that Dr. Allison Ampe and Mr. Thielman are sort of school committee representatives, emissaries to this committee. So I want to share, for me, what's important in looking at these different options is that there are some pretty significant differences in build times. And that's a real concern for me, that we don't elect to choose the building that's going to take the longest, because I think that putting our students and staff and administrators in a position where they're having to manage that for year after year after year after year, I think there's a real burnout that can happen. And you know, I did it as a parent and a volunteer in a school for a year, and we were really glad when it was over. So I can't imagine doing that 5.5+ years. I understand that there are phasing and that it would be handled, but that's a long time to be slogging along on a project. So I think that's really important to me. And then the other thing is that I have full faith that the committee will make a far more informed decision than I could make, which is great. And I'm really grateful to everybody who's done this, because I don't have to, which is nice. Once an option is chosen, I'm looking forward to having, within reason. I think that a lot of the timeline information is very hazy right now, and I don't think it's been, and I think it's important that we pick the building that is going to work and that, you know, is going to get us the things that we want. But once we've done that, the more information that we can communicate about the timeline of this project, the better. Because I think there are some people who think it's going to start next year and it's going to be over in 2 years. And I know that there were 8th grade parents who sat in a meeting and they were told that their children could very likely see new classrooms, right? These are problematic things that once we start getting ready to go to the voters in March, April, like, it takes a long time to educate people. And the sooner we can start doing that, the better. Because I think, you know, we want to be able to be going to the community to ask them to support this project, you know, in April, May, June of next year, and not be knocking on the door and then being like, oh, great, it's going to be like a 1-year project. Like, it would be so nice if we could make some gains in that level of education. Because my experience in speaking with people is we're nowhere close on that, which is fine. Like, there's a lot of time, and once we pick an option, I think it's going to be so much easier to communicate that. But I'm looking forward to being able to do that.
Okay. Mr. Thielman?
Yeah, so one thing I would say is that in terms of the timeline, this is based on conversations I've had with other people that have been through building projects. The first year is often the most disruptive. But then once you get into the second year, there's less disruption because there's swing space and there's alternatives. So that is, you know, but we don't know yet because we haven't come up with the phasing plan.
Right.
So we just don't have a plan yet. We're not
Which is
that far.
fine.
Yeah, we're not that far along.
Yeah.
So.
Did you want to mention that the option 1, we saw a refined timeline that was shorter than what we
Yes, for option 1, we did see, yes, they came back, the architects did come back with a more refined timeline that is shorter. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think for a lot of members of the committee, my sense is that what committee members are wrestling with is this, is whether to build all new or whether to renovate 115,000 square feet and build 300 and something square feet. That's what I would say. For most committee members, that's what they're wrestling with and they're voting. That's what they're down to. I
Mr.
can't
Schlickman.
speak for everybody, but that's what they tell me.
Okay. Before I comment on the options, I'd like to make a request of the committee to consider, you know, we have people come up here and visit us at the school committee meeting, and then they try to leave the building, and they get lost because they don't know that the main entrance is on the 3rd floor. So I see that the front entrance of the building is on the 2nd. My suggestion would be to start at G, or ground level or garden level, and have the 1st floor be the floor that everybody, you know, that the main entrance is on, so that we don't have people trying to get out on the 2nd floor when they're really getting out on the
G1,
first.
G2, 1, 2, 3.
G1, 2, 3, 4, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's just sort of my little, and it's very European too, because you know they don't count the ground floor as the 1st floor. That said, the most important thing for me is the final outcome, because whatever this is, it's what we're going to have to live with for 50 plus years. And if we cut corners or do something for temporary expedience, in the long run, it's not the best product we had. So I think the primary focus needs to be on what the final outcome is. I have a preference for preservation, so my preference is run 1, 2, 3, 4, basically. That's sort of my bias. I think that there are aspects of the old building which have character and have tradition that people will love in the future if we are able to renovate and restore. Other parts of this building, people will celebrate the demolition. So I hope that we have both levels of celebration involved in it. But I'm really impressed with the work and the thoughtfulness that I've seen going forward. Question is there any takeaway on what we were getting back on that survey? Was there a community distribution of preferences and outcomes?
There, the way we summed it up, I don't know if I could try and get that onto the, I didn't come prepared to do it. I've got a PowerPoint. I can go.
AHS building website?
Yeah, it's on the website, yes.
Website.
But anyway, I mean,
Today, but yeah.
okay, so I can show you folks. But it was basically on, for the overall ratings for each of the options. Option 1 was, I can't read the numbers upside down, but option 1 is 3.5, option 2 is 3, option 3 was 3.3, and option 4 was 1.9. So we felt that people felt slightly positive about options 1 and 3, neutral about option 2, and negative about option 4. And this is also on there. This is looking at the same information as a pie chart. And I don't know if it's on there or not, but anyway, it's looking at where likes are, where people who rated the option 5, which is the highest like category, in blue, 4s were in teal, 3s are in sort of a light greeny yellow, 2s are in orange, and then people who rated it a 1 is in a dark orange. And so this is option 1, this is option 2, this is option 3, and option 4. And you can see that there's more likes in some option 1 and 2, or 1 and 3, and more dislikes in option 4. As we talked about on the survey and last night, the community feedback is really helpful, but it's also just one of the many factors that the committee is taking into consideration as it decides, you know, financials are important, the sustainability, all these other things we're looking at are important.
One point I want to make is that at this point, you know, I'm not even sure it's not architecturally accurate to use the word design at this point. So these are massings, and even if we, to respond to Paul's concern, even if if the committee votes to adopt a new option, all new, it is still the architect's intent to create something distinctive in that option, including using something historic and very New Englandy. So that's still her intention. Now, then, there's a value engineering process where we reduce costs and all that stuff to meet the budget, so. But I mean, is that accurate? That's very much Laurie's intention, yeah.
Okay. Let me, Mr. Cardin was next, and then.
Thank you. So I guess I'm just reacting to the new option 2B, and I don't know what the proposed schedule would be here, but the swing space that you create is the arts wing, which to me isn't quite as useful as a whole humanities wing being built up front. So, you know, in option two, you know, the original option 2, you can still get to the auditorium. You have to go down one flight of stairs. It's still very close to the entrance. So I don't see a whole lot of benefit of putting the auditorium up front, just for the sake of being able to enter on the same level, as if that sacrifices a better staging opportunity. But I wasn't there for the whole details, so.
Okay. Dr. Seuss.
So I was there for 3 hours. One thing I got there late, so I may have missed the handout. I didn't see the one on the educational, you know, which of the options satisfy which educational desire. So I was wondering if we could get that.
Is it on the, did you put it on?
Is it on the
That's
website?
not, that wasn't final, they were editing it
Yeah, they
on the
were.
fly
okay, so-
because, in response to things that they were hearing, and so we don't have that in the final version, so that's why it's not up.
Okay, so
It will
I'm just
be as of,
curious.
probably as of Tuesday, we'll have
Yeah, I
that
mean,
one.
how would you, how do you phrase it, Kathy? Number 1 had the most, was the most.
It had the most, in
Right,
terms of
right. I remember
adjacency.
you read through things, but I
Yeah.
was like, I'd love to see a picture of it. You know, I just
Yeah,
didn't see it. So
There were things about where the learning common was, and what would be the best position, on where the special education rooms in one option. In fact, I think it's number 3. You've got, but these can be changed, but we only could do with what we had in hand. To have them so separated from the learning commons.
but we'll get them eventually, is
But
basically what you're
the
saying. So,
important-
okay, so that's what was my question.
Yeah.
Will we have an opportunity on Tuesday to the public to make comments, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I'd like to make a couple comments now, but I'd love to make a comment then. I want to urge people here to really strongly consider option 2B. What I understood about the staging is actually it is the shortest option of the 3 options that we're really considering, because of the possibility of tearing down tearing down the old auditorium, you know, and then building these new things. I don't remember the details, but it came out to be the shortest, and I think there's some benefit of that. I think there's some benefit in having 30,000 extra square feet for a slight increase in cost, but not as proportionally as much. But the third reason that I'd really like to urge you guys to consider too, and I've been going back and forth on my own, is I think it's a compromise position. I think there's 20 to 25% of this town that is passionately interested in keeping some aspects of the old architecture. And I think there's another 20 to 25% of the town that's passionately interested in not having parking in the front and having, you know, new things and having it as energy efficient as possible. And it just feels like this is potentially a compromise of, it's no one's, like, you know, maybe it's not as many people's top position, but it's a lot of people's second choice. And I think there's some value to that. So that's my urging of your votes.
Okay, so I'm happy to continue this, or you can come to our building committee.
Yeah, so come to the meeting on the 26th. We're still talking about how to structure the meeting, but we'll see how far we get. If we come up, if there's, you know, a majority and we pick an option, that could be it that night. But we have a meeting scheduled on the 28th as well, so we have 2 meetings scheduled.
Well, we have the survey information, those listing, other than that one report, because there were so many things that were being changed as we went through it. All this information is on the ahsbuilding.org website. And there's a mechanism where you can send emails. So if you have comments, you can still comment. And if we get comments, we will, you know, collate them and, you know, give them to people. I was even asked today whether we could even do yet another survey, and I just thought there was just too much to try to put together between now and then.
We've gotten, you know, almost 1,300 people have
Right.
weighed in.
We had a good,
We've had good feedback. We've had 5 forums. We've got a lot of input.
Yeah.
you know, eventually, you got to make a decision.
You have to make a
So,
decision.
and you can't, you know, you got to just, every individual member of the committee has to weigh the facts. They were all selected for a reason, and listen to all the different opinions, and then make a vote.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the committee collectively will make a good decision.
Yes. Well, sticking with the theme of buildings, Gibbs, I just want everybody to know that Gibbs is still on time
On budget.
and on budget. In fact, we even have a slightly things are doing well on budget. Things are doing well on budget. And, you know, the floor is going in right now, and all of the other planning which goes on parallel to it is also going quite well. In fact, I had almost several-hour meetings today. And I think that this summer, we're going to continue to have a lot of meetings as we want to make sure that every detail to the best we can make sure is, you know, covered before the opening of school. With respect to Hardy, that too is going well. The framing is up with steel. And the Lake Street playground equipment has been ordered. It will be here in August. They had the plan for the new fence, the plan for the ground. There'll be some rubberized areas near the play equipment, but a lot of the rest of it will be a mulch type, the fiber that we use. So that's happening. The good news on the Chandler side for the playground, I think we're going to be able to save the swing set. But
That's
at
it?
any rate, but
That's it, or?
no,
No,
it's just
that's-
there's little, we're hardly touching Chandler yet.
Right.
I'm just saying there's little things, and the work for the cafeteria is also going on. So that's all going quite well. All right, moving on. District goals. We've been talking a lot about district goals, and I think next year we're going to have a conversation about how we want to do this, because we've had a lot of wordsmithing that's gone on. What you have in your packet is the last version that included the two motions, one made by Mr. Card and one by Dr. Allison Ampe on wording. Then there were suggestions that were made from various people, including Dr. Seuss, in terms of actual wordsmithing them. And this is what you have in terms of the goals. Now, there is one thing that came up among administrators I just want to point out. He didn't change it because I think it fell into the category of not just grammatical or commas and so forth. And that is the word alignment rather than accordance. Alignment is a word that we use a lot. Now, I think the reason why accordance is put in there is when I had cautioned people, let's not have edu-speak as we, in our district goals, so everybody would understand what was meant. But I swing back to, well, maybe accordance doesn't really convey the same strength of what is going on there than the word alignment. So I just put that there for your consideration. If we change nothing, then you've already voted for the goals. If you want to change accordance for alignment, then we would have to have a revote, because I think that falls into a category other than grammatical changes. So, but other than that, this just represents the suggestions from various people who reread them again for grammar and taking out words, adding words, and so forth.
Mr. Hayner?
As stated before by the chair, the definition of cultural competency and things of that nature has to be done, whether we need, I would support the idea of having an off-site meeting like we've had in the past to hash it out in an informal manner. I am concerned that cultural competency is, the closest we get to it here is, I think the word cultural bias. A lot of discussion has gone on the past couple of years using the phrase cultural competency. We've talked about, in the superintendent's goals, we talked about providing teachers time and going with it, and I don't see the connection here. Maybe it's there in the district goals with what Ms. Morgan said before, and the superintendent's goal. If it's there and I can't see it, and the rest of the committee sees that connection, that's fine. But if it isn't there, I think it needs to be clarified. Whether that takes us having that off-site meeting and getting the language clear in everybody's mind, I don't know.
May
Please.
I? With a lot of discussion around about whether to actually write in here, the cultural competency that people develop, or their own awareness, their own insight into their own biases, what you hope will be the product of that is culturally responsive teaching. So I think that's where the confusion is in terms of the cultural competency is sort of a personal development, whereas as a teacher, we want to see that personal development reflected in the responsive teaching.
But that goes to the issue of, you're assuming that I just need educational lessons and skills and units to provide it, that I am already cultural competent. And I think that's one of the questions we've had in the district about cultural competency. And I may feel I'm culturally competent until I actually go through a program and realize maybe I'm not. And we've had professionals talk about it. I would like to see professionals actually going through a thing. If all we're doing is providing lesson plans and suggested units and direction for teachers, I think we probably are doing a disservice. That's my opinion. I don't think we are a cultural, and I don't mean this in any way negative towards our staff. We are basically white, middle-class staff. And to say that we're culturally competent, I don't think we are. And from me on down. And I'm nervous about that. We've had a lot of discussion on this for a couple of years. I want us to be there. I think we were making some great strides in going forward. I think the superintendent's goal, the intent of having staff, if staff are being trained to recognize who and where they are and then develop units, that's great. If all we're doing is providing units and providing lesson plans and things, I think that's the cart before the horse. That's my opinion.
We're not doing the former, developing the lessons. The work, and it has been going on this year for that matter, in a number of schools in different ways, is developing your own understandings, your own competency in this area. I don't think we have lessons on this that we're giving to teachers. That's really not what we're doing. But it's an awareness, for example, when you're reading a book. And teachers do read books ahead of what they teach. And it's looking at the book or a lesson you already have through a different lens. And that's the kind of, it's a developing those different perspectives that we want to have.
How am I identifying who I am? Reading a book, I'm bringing, if I have a bias, conscious or unconscious, I'm going to bring that to the book. I apologize to make this discussion.
So I'm feeling like this is getting a little away from what we're talking about, which is in part, do we want to have accordance versus alignment or not?
Yes.
But I think this is, I agree with Dr. Bodie. I think this is something we may want to address in a retreat. I think there's a lot of understanding that would be really helpful for us to have. And that wouldn't be helped by some more discussion. So this is something we were talking about.
I'm just concerned that we're going away from where we were a year ago. I agree we need that. We need that retreat.
Okay. Mr. Thielman.
I favor alignment.
Okay.
And so I'm very comfortable with the word alignment. I think it makes more sense for an educational document, and that's what this is. And I also, so I move that we substitute accordance with alignment.
Second?
Okay. Anyone else want to speak to the motion? It was, you seconded and you wrote the first one, so.
I didn't write it. That was the word originally that was in there, and when it got moved around, it didn't sound quite right, so.
Okay. Okay, anyone else? Okay, so all in favor of changing accordance with alignment?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so it'll
So-
be,
Yeah, so are we done with the goals?
I'm not,
We're
Well,
done,
until
we're
the
done.
summer.
okay, so we're done.
For the moment.
Nah, just to
Okay.
make sure we're clear, first meeting in September, you're going to come back, Kathy, with activities and all the specifics, right?
Yes.
Good. I think that's where we get a better sense. I think we have better discussion then.
In fact, may I? Just a little bit more, just tell you what we're doing, because we're looking at the five-year plan and it's part of our district goals.
Yeah.
Because it does relate to what the activities will be. We are actually having an administrative retreat, all the administrators in the district for 2 days next week. And it's going to be facilitated to take a look at this, where are we going? What are the top priorities? Where are our values? How is this looking? And clearly, we have categories that we are going to be considering, but what's going to emerge from this is, next year, what are the things that we need to be doing, and what's going to be the next few years. And I think there's a lot of data that we've been collecting for administrators to be looking at. So I'm going to be very happy to share some of this with you when we have it, after we do this, but we're really taking this in a very thoughtful approach to a multi-year look at where we go, and then we can cost it out, which is what budget and the long-range planning group wants. But I think that this is, you've talked about this when you heard the elementary principals talking about multi-year. Well, we're really going to dig into this a lot more deeply. Share it with you all soon and see what you had.
Great.
Just a couple of other things. I want to acknowledge, this just came out, that Stacy Greenland, who is one of our art teachers in the elementary level, is going to have an art lesson published on a website being created by the accomplished team of art educators and authors in the country. So she has a lesson that is going to be included in this compendium of outstanding lessons. So I want to congratulate her. But it also speaks to the art program in general. I mean, all of our art teachers are so creative and so inspirational to our students to unleash their own creativity. Also, the group that had an AEF grant for creating colors of STEM, we had an exhibit back in the spring. They now have their next poster, and I just wanted to mention that because it was an AEF grant, and I'm very excited actually about this project. The next poster is with Stephen Chen, who is one of the founders of YouTube. And so this is a poster that these are people of color who have made great contributions in the world of math and science and technology, and that's what's being acknowledged. So the next step is how do we get all these posters remade so we can have them in all of our schools. So I think that is it, but let me just double check. That is it. Other than one last comment, in that we're ending the school year, but I have to just acknowledge, really, and we have a teacher here, one of our officers of the union too, just what an incredible job they do all year. And right down to the wire, they're just pushing, and they do an outstanding job. And I hope that the parents write little thank you notes and to them, because they just make such an important difference in the lives of all the children here. And clearly, as we see, we have more parents that want to come and experience our great school. So, so you'll accept the thank you on behalf of all your colleagues. All right. Thank you. All right.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, moving on, consent agenda. Oh, did we have a kindergarten number?
Yes, we do. It's still 571.
Oh,
Okay.
good. Oh, that's great.
It stopped for the moment.
Okay, consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the committee so requests, in which event the item will be considered in its normal sequence. Approval of warrant 18252, total warrant amount $1,178,387, $1,048.49, June 7th, 2018. Approval of minutes, school committee regular meeting, June 7th, 2018. No trips. Approval of carryover for 4 vacation days for Kathleen Bodie, superintendent. May I have a motion?
So move.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Any abstentions? None. Okay, so that passes unanimously. There are no policies. Subcommittee and liaison reports. Budget?
So we met this week to go over the changes to the budget and just to get an update on the 5-year plan stuff and revolving funds, but not a whole lot to report. There'll be more. We're having a meeting in the summer with a joint meeting with the CIA committee on July 31st, and we'll obviously get more information then about the priorities, and then in the fall start developing the actual budget itself.
Okay, great. Community relations.
Well, we met yesterday. The big piece on our table still is the after-school programs, and we talked about potentially some policy changes. We talked about possible sort of requirements of our after-school programs, so they satisfy certain things with respect to making information available to parents. Talking about maybe having a common calendar, just things that would, we're working to increase capacity as much as we can, but there's other things that parents are upset about that they'd like, that are potentially easier to solve, that we might be able to work on. So we will maybe be meeting at the end of the summer if people are around. I don't know. I haven't heard everyone's availability. So that was the main thing. We then talked about what kind of communication we're going to do with the community about potential calendar changes and time changes, shifts. And as I understand it, there'll be a survey going out to parents, but there's a lot more that we need to do, and so we'll be intricately involved in that process. And then the final thing was the Arlington Human Rights Committee would like us to approve at some point a sort of a policy of how to respond to hate incidents, and we're working on that. We only have a sort of small objections to what they presented, and so I'm sending that back to them, and hopefully we'll get this settled in the fall.
The survey will also go to teachers, too.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Just to add, we had a conversation about a policy.
Yeah, I mentioned the policy change, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, they'll be in the minutes, and then when we meet again, we'll have language and we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll send it to you.
That's what I'm saying. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. CIA?
Joint meeting, July 31st with budget to discuss the 5-year plan. We're going to see the tactical, practical brilliance of John and Kathy. Just raise it up.
I do.
We met on last Thursday, June 14th. Several things happened, and I ask for your thoughts and attention on this because some big stuff is coming down. First of all, we started off with Outgoing Policy JLCE-E, the draft minutes for the meeting are before you, which will become Policy ADF when we adopt policy changes. It's our nutrition and wellness policy. Ms. Morgan and Juliet Moore came before us to ask for some clarity on outdoor recess and winter weather. And so we are going to recommend language that states outdoor recess should be provided for students at times when it is not precipitating and the wind chill is above 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's what we're going to do with that. Policy BEA, regular school committee meetings, the recommendation will be to change Thursday to Tuesday with an implementation of September 2019. Of course, the committee can do what they want with the recommendation. It's not binding, but that's what we're recommending. we went through policy manual revisions. Now, previously, we went through sections A and B, which are really the tough and difficult ones, and we made it through well under Mr. Cardin's leadership. We went into policy sections C and D, and we looked at our version of the policy, we looked at the MASC version of the policy, and we're going to delete some policies. We're going to replace ours with the MASC version in some places, and there are a couple of places where we're going to make wording changes one to the other, and they're detailed here. It's you know, when you get this stuff back, you will see what the changes are. Most of them are fairly minor or technical. The one that is substantive that we were in adopting the MASC language for line items will be going to the DESI categories rather than the ones we're currently using. Our future meetings are Monday, July 9th, Monday, August 6th. We hope to get through E and F in July, G and H in August, and that Mr. Hayner asked, and it's a very good idea, that the committee report that recommendations for files A, B, C, and D will be presented to the committee over the summer. In other words, the work that we've done so far, basically on August 6th, we're going to stop and take all the work we have done and send it to you with the hope that we will have a first reading for all the policy changes we've made up until August, recommendations we've made up through August 6th, with a first read in September. So there's going to be a lot of tedious and minor revisions that you're going to be looking at, hopefully, for votes moving forward. And that is the report of the Policies and Procedures Subcommittee.
Can I ask a question?
Awesome. Dr. Seuss?
So the policy that we were thinking of changing is a policy in B? So
Which,
we don't know if-
which, who's thinking of changing a policy?
There was a discussion in the community relations to send you a suggestion change. I don't know if that policy is there anymore. I mean, I guess we'll send it over.
We'll send it over, and we can look at what we've decided, because Michael Gilbert is keeping the track record so that we can debate that. Our next meeting is July 9th.
Yeah, wasn't that in B?
J, I think.
Oh, it was J?
Was it a J?
I think it was J.
Okay, I'm sorry, then.
Oh, if it's a J, we haven't gotten there.
Okay, can you send me the number, because I have it written down in my notes wrong then.
I'd just like to add, this is all going to be done before the new year, because
The
Mr.
policy
Gilbert's
number again.
retiring.
Yeah. We're
In
I mean,
January?
we will have a new field
wow.
rep, but
Say that, we could-
But we certainly want to get
Excellent.
as much done as we can before Mr. Gilbert retires, for continuity. He knows us well. We've worked well with him. He's done a good job for us, and as much as we can get done before he leaves, the better.
J,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
It's a J policy?
I have it wrong in my notes then.
Okay.
Okay, so we can
That's fine.
work
Okay.
that out
We'll
later.
I'll figure out what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta find the policy manual. Okay.
Legal services review,
That, we can pull that off until, I'd say, December, because we're gathering the materials and stuff.
we need to have the motion to create the subcommittee.
Okay.
So can I have a motion to create
So
a
moved.
legal
Second.
services subcommittee to,
Gilman and Mr. Hayner.
okay, can you remind me the timing of the report? I forgot.
By the, I think I said the first meeting in February.
Okay.
Pardon me? Mr. Thielman and Mr. Hayner.
Thiel.
CUTE.
It wasn't J, was it?
Hasn't been
Okay.
done yet.
Right. Okay, any comments about it? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? No. Okay, so it's unanimous. See if there's anything else. Gibbs Committee, High School Building Committee we've heard from. Was there anything else you wanted to say? No.
We're good.
You're very good.
Great
Thank you
work,
very
great
much.
work.
Gibbs
I would
Committee,
encourage everyone to come into the meeting, and if you can't be there, if you want to submit, just like Jennifer articulated her thoughts, if people want to do that in writing, if they can't be, that'd be great. And I'll make sure that every member of the committee has the school committee members' thoughts. in writing, if you want to do that.
Gibbs Committee,
We haven't met.
okay. Liaison
Like,
reports?
we met a month ago, but we haven't met since the
That's
last
fine,
time I
that's fine,
provided an update.
that's fine.
Well, the building's
Okay,
not
we're
open, how
trying to
can
be
you meet?
fast. Liaison reports.
Sorry.
Anyone?
Yeah, so I haven't told anybody about my previous liaison report. So I did go to the meeting with our new Addison principal, the liaison to Addison, Brian Merringer. Okay, and that was great. I met with the Stratton principal recently, and I got an opportunity to see some of the project-based work that's happening at Stratton. That was really exciting. And I visited the Arlington Human Rights Committee and talked about various things that were going on in school. So just to let you know that I've been doing my job.
Various things that are going on.
Sorry. We had a conversation back and forth. Anyway, I've been doing my job, is what I'm trying to communicate.
Okay. Future agenda items. Okay. And at that point, we had no additional information for a second executive session, so can I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, then we're adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
KFE, I think it's KFE.